did. Yes. What was that?
That's him.
I'm listening in my ear. I'm right here again.
Welcome everybody to the Oroville City Council meeting. We have come back from closed session. Direction given, no action taken. Stand with me for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no proclamations or presentations this evening, so we'll move right along to the hearing of non-agenda items. It's at this time that speakers can come to the podium, state their name, and speak for 3 minutes. If we have more than 15 speakers, we will reduce that time. So I have quite a few in the queue of non-agenda items, and the first speaker is David Goodson, and the next speaker is Tasha Levinson. So if you come up towards the podium, we can get started. Thank you.
I just want to say good evening to the City Council.
You turn the microphone on. Thank you. Sorry that wasn't on already.
Okay, so I had to do that. The reason why I'm before the City Council this evening is that I would like to report what is a health hazard in our community. And the address is in Oroville on 2685 D Street, next to 2687 D Street. The address of 2685 D Street, you won't see that address posted. It's a lot that has a lot of debris on it. There are houses in the surrounding area, and directly next to it, the housing and the tenants that live there are plagued by rats that are coming out of that area. And this has been a lot that has needed attention for a long, long time. And I understand that in the past some action was going to be taken, and then no action was taken to get this cleared up. I believe that if this were next to any of your homes, that you would take action on this. And so it deserves no less attention as if it were wherever it is located. It is an extreme health hazard. There are rats that are running around there. I asked the young man that lived next door, and he said he says the rats are like the size of cats, small cats. And so something should be done, and I would like the city to look into that immediately and see what can be done. Thank you.
Actually, there's some information on this. Chief LeBron and Mr. Belzer and I have actually, and David Boyer, been working on this. The person that owned the home actually passed away. So it is an open code case, but it's been brought to our attention again. So thank you for bringing it here, but I know that we visited the property on June 4th and some actions are being taken. But the house is in a little bit of a limbo because the person that owned the house had passed away. Thank you. Tasha Levinson.
I have something to add to what you just said. It's my understanding that that property is now bank-owned as well. And so in the event that the city would intervene, we would have to go through a cleanup and a lien process on that property.
Correct. Well, I will check with code enforcement tomorrow to find out what the current status is and where we are at with working with the bank to get that cleaned up.
And Bill, coordinate that with you.
And I will coordinate that with Scott.
Tasha and then August. Hi, Tasha.
Hi. I just wanted to follow up on the Oroville water study that was presented to LAFCO
meeting on the first Thursday of this month as item 4.2 on the agenda. I'm only repeating that, so if you wanted to go online, that's where you can look to see where it is, the status of it as it is now. Apparently some final changes are made and then it is, quote, accepted, but I understand from the newspaper, there is no actual formal presentation to the city. So if you, as city council members, want to see the water study that you ordered and directed to have done and find out about it, you apparently have to go to LAFCO, so I'm letting you know that.
Some of us have read it, thank you.
I've already asked that it be added to the agenda, so it will be on our agenda.
Well, good. I'm very glad to hear that. Okay.
Thank you. August Lincoln, and then John Miller George.
August Lincoln, Oroville. We hear all about the dam collapsing, possible collapse.
Can you speak
But
up?
we haven't heard about the bridges going over the rivers. Terminal Bridge, Highway 70 Bridge, and the 162 Bridge.
August, can I ask you to speak into the microphone? Thank you.
We all heard about the dam, the near collapse, people suing in the DWR, but we haven't heard about if anybody inspected the bridge that go over the Feather River. Terminal Bridge, the Highway 70 Bridge, and 162 Bridge. Does the council know if it has been inspected by the feds, the state, the county, or the city? If the water was so forceful going down, destroying Riverbend Park, can you imagine what it did to the foundation of the bridges? And so I think it's in your behalf that you check it out, whoever's in charge of inspecting the bridges, because if the thing collapses, then you'll be in a lot of financial litigation, because you're responsible for the safety of the citizens of Oroville.
We will certainly ask Caltrans if they've inspected the bridges.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you, August. John Miller George?
I don't have any complaints about anything in the city. I did make a public records request, and I've received no reply, not even a receipt of the request. So I would like for there to be a better explanation of the steps you take and what to expect when you do make a public records request to the city. I'd also like to know if the city has set up a procedure for what we would call in the tech industry a brainstorming meeting, which is basically you sit down and discuss all the wild ideas that you could think of to make money. And you don't criticize the ideas, you just make a list of them and then you assign people to evaluate them. Government moves slowly, and this is one reason. I also would like to know if it's possible to meet with and talk to the city attorney about potential projects and if there's any legal implications or interference that needs to be, rooted out. In biotech news, German scientists announced today that they have come up with cells that will release insulin, and I'm a diabetic, so I'm highly interested in this, release insulin in the presence of, believe it or not, caffeine. My son is involved with curing hemophilia, and I think I announced that at the meeting before, but it's just the first wave of the new high-tech biotech stuff, and I'd like to see some of that being done here. Finally, it's cheaper to feed the homeless than it is to jail them, arrest them, charge them, and all this other rigmarole that we go through. The city of Albuquerque, about 4 years ago or so, shot one of their homeless people. And the uproar caused the Justice Department to intervene, and now, believe it or not, the police hand out little chits that will transfer a homeless person to a place where they can get a meal, a place to get a shower. We heard of Haven of Hope. Okay, you'd save money. Okay, you'd save money by taking better care of people that are in need. And many times the homeless people are the least able to take care of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Holy Spirit?
Thank you, City Council, Madam Mayor. Grateful and thankful for another opportunity to come and to pray over our city and over our City Council and all our public servants. I would like if we could just open in prayer automatically without having me to use my non-agenda time, which I don't mind doing, but I have opinions on a lot of other stuff I would like to talk about, but I believe prayer is the most important thing. So, Father, I thank you for this day, the gift of life. What a precious gift, the gift of salvation. Thank you for our City Council, and I pray your blessings upon their lives and upon their families. Pray for all our public servants, for our police and the fire departments and all the people who go serve every day. Your word says the greatest of all will be the servant of all. We pray for wisdom to guide our city, to use our resources wisely. We pray for your provision. Lord, we know that you're not broken. And we know there are solutions to all the problems. That, Lord Jesus said when we pray like this, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We know that you have plans for Oroville, plans to prosper and not to harm, for hope and a future. And so we speak blessings over our city. We speak guidance, supernatural guidance. We declare blessings for the church, that we would wake up and see the opportunity that you have for us, Lord, that it is the homeless that you put at our gate for us to take care of. It's the people in jail for us to go visit in the hospitals. And so, Lord, let us arise to the occasion. Let us wake up. Let us see the opportunity. Pray for all the service groups. There are so many in our city that are the YMCA and the Rotary Club and so many. And so we lift them all up to you, Lord, that you would steer the spirit and activate your people for such a time as this. We love you. We thank you. We praise you. We give you all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
That is the last of the non-agenda speakers. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item this evening before we move on? Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, the consent calendar. Is there anything that needs to be told about the consent calendar before moving forward?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to pull 6.7.
Anything else?
Madam Mayor, I respectfully request to pull 6.6 and
Need some glasses over there?
doesn't matter, my arm is long, all right. And 6.4.
Okay, on the consent calendar with items 6.4, 6.6, and 6.7, looking for any discussion or a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the consent calendar, exempt items 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7.
Second.
So first and second, voting is going to be open any minute. All votes are in?
Right.
No? No. Everybody revote? Please? Jack? We need to vote now. Dan?
Yes, Judy said it.
All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Voting closed. Moving on to item 6.4, adopt resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to execute an amendment to the professional service agreement with California State University Chico, extending the term of the fiscal year 2018-19. Chief LeBron?
Madam Mayor, I just want a couple points of clarification. In the staff report, it says that this is for, first paragraph under background, it says it's for fiscal year 2017-18. The correction in there should be it's fiscal year 2018-19.
Okay.
And in the fiscal impact, this is going to be coming from account 1601-6360, which has a balance of $14,000 in it for the 18-19 fiscal year. I just wanted to provide that clarity to the council.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on item number 6.4? Looking for a motion?
Move we adopt 6.4.
Second.
So first and second. Voting's open. All votes are in. Voting closed.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to 6.6, adopt resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to execute an amendment to the professional services agreement between the city of Oroville and Tom Lando to serve as interim city administrator. Extends the term through October 31st, 2018. Any questions or comments?
If I could just provide one point of clarity, Madam Mayor, on the agreement number 3246-2, which would be the second amendment to the agreement, on the last line of section 1, scope of service, it has been added at the bottom, these words, and will be paid on a bi-weekly schedule, which means Mr. Lando will be paid every 2 weeks.
Any questions or comments on item 6.6? Looking for a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8709.
I'll second that.
All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Voting closed.
Motion carries.
Moving on to item 6.7. Adopt resolution number 8701, authorizing and directing the mayor to execute the airport ground lease.
So I had this item pulled.
Yes, Susan?
Reason being, I had an opportunity I believe it was last week, to take a tour of the airport facility with Mr. Farley. And I did see the property in question, the 6 acres. And so here's just a part of my thought process. There's always the potential for the city to get a buyer for those 6 acres. Number 2, it is property. My question is, are there any other viable or comparable land options for lease for this project in close proximity to the Lineman College? And it is my understanding that if this agreement is approved and it's executed, that it has the potential to extend through October 2036.
Yes, and we can't sell airport property, it can only be leased. And I did have a question from someone else, what about a higher and better use? Well, the land rent is the same regardless of what it's used for. And because it's industrial land, it's not likely, well, it's not even zoned so we could put retail there. So from my standpoint, the way I looked at it, the city's had control of that, great opportunity to let them expand in Oroville and keep them here. They have a large campus in Texas, and I'd hate to have them decide, well, we couldn't find more property in Oroville, let's consolidate our training to Texas. I don't know that, I'm not saying they would do that, but I'd certainly like to accommodate them here on land that's never been used, to my knowledge, for anything, so.
Thank you. I think it's always good to play devil's advocate and.
No, I think it's an excellent question. If you have a question, or all the others, and airport, the FAA regulations are not something that's well known, so it's a good question. Any other questions?
Questions or comments? Looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 8710, directing the mayor to execute an airport ground lease agreement with NLC CA Incorporated, the Northwest Lineman College, for the expansion of their facilities.
I'll second that.
First and second, voting's open. All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Voting closed.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I know the Lineman College. Thanks, you also.
Moving on to public hearings this evening. I'm going to open the public hearing, and then I'm going to ask for the presentation and answer any questions, and then I'm going to open it for public hearing.
And Mayor, if I could remind the audience that if they do wish to comment on this, they should get the cards into you prior to the conclusion of the staff report, prior to council starting their discussion at least.
Okay, so this says that we're going to discuss it first, and then we're going to open it for public.
That's fine.
Okay,
Before it comes to you for action is what I'm saying.
great. So we do have quite a few speakers on item 7.1 this evening. So if you feel that you're gonna want to speak on it, go ahead and fill out a card and I'll call your name. Moving on to 7.1, it's the cannabis business tax. Council will conduct a public hearing to solicit input from the public relating to the ordinance proposed for the implementation of a cannabis business tax in the city of Oroville. After the close of the hearing, council will consider the following. Introducing ordinance number, an ordinance of the people of the city of Oroville, California, adding to chapter of the Oroville Municipal Code, approving and implementing a cannabis business tax in the city of Oroville, and adopting a resolution approving ballot measure text to be submitted to the voters of the city imposing a cannabis business tax, requesting the assistance of the county of Butte in connection with that election, and the requesting consolidation of that election with any other election held on that date. Fiscal impact for ballot measure is estimated at $10,000. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and general public. My name is Neil Hall. I'm with SCI Consulting Group, and we are going to walk through the basics of the ordinance. This is a tax ordinance, so it does not authorize any cannabis activity. Tax ordinance is in place in case the city does decide to move forward with some cannabis activity, and we'll see some revenue from it. Oh, thank you. In the implementation steps, this is the fifth step, actually moving ahead of the other steps. A ballot measure is the next step to take. So the ballot measure that we're proposing, that will be for you to consider, is new general fund revenue. Currently, it is a general tax, and the current regulations or laws are that it needs to pass at a 50% plus one threshold. There is the Tax Fairness Act as an initiative now. If it's approved, general taxes will require a 2/3 vote. The results from other cannabis taxes are in that chart below. In 2018, 14 of the taxes passed at 58 to 85%. I won't bother reading them, but I can tell you now that most cannabis taxes are passing at well over a 2/3 majority. Two of the taxes that recently passed were taxes that we worked on, San Luis Obispo County and the city of Merced. So the elements of a cannabis tax are to provide revenue maximization for the city of Oroville, to decrease the black market over time, and to also take into consideration competition from nearby municipalities. The tax is only paid by cannabis purchasers, and they're usually supported by both the people in favor and against it. Those in favor typically say, if it's the only way that we can conduct this activity, go ahead and tax it. Those opposed say, fine, we don't like it, but if you're going to do it, at least we want to see some tax benefit from it. We did make some changes. I know that there has been an amended document and for the tax levels. We did have a stakeholder meeting last week and talked about some of these, but what we advise the city is to put in a cap, a maximum tax rate. But the idea is to let these businesses get started and be sustainable, so we're recommending a lower initial tax rate. The tax rate can be changed up or down at any time by the council by resolution. It just cannot exceed whatever the maximum tax rate is. So at 10%, you will not be able to exceed that amount. It does not, again, authorize any cannabis activity. We see cities like Davis that put taxes in place prior to allowing any cannabis activity, so that when and if they allow, and they don't allow all activities even now, there is a tax so that the city can benefit from that. The tax revenue can be spent for, and some of the wording has changed a little bit here as well, but unrestricted general revenue purposes. These are some of the local tax rates nearby. City of Shasta Lake is a tax that we did earlier last year. The city of Marysville has a 5% plus a square foot tax. Yolo County has a 4% and a 5% tax with a 15% cap. The city of Davis has a 10% tax. The city of Dixon 15%, and Sacramento has a 4% tax rate in place. Our estimate, and again, this is a very loose estimate because we don't know what, if any, activities you're going to allow in Oroville, but just looking at the city of Shasta Lake, they brought in about $550,000 plus in tax revenue last year at 6%. We're estimating between $300,000 and $600,000 in tax revenue, assuming that you allow retail activities. This is a timeline of the tax. We have to work with the county to get a tax measure passed. We have to have a resolution and a final date to file. That is July 20th. The arguments in favor and the impartial analysis will be due on the 17th of August, with rebuttal arguments due the 24th, and then of course November 6th, all of the residents or citizens who are registered voters here in Oroville will vote on whether or not to pass that tax. And this is a tentative timeline. They haven't been finalized by the Registrar of Voters yet for Butte County. And that is the sum of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if you'd like to ask them after public comment, that's fine too.
Well, I have a question. The listing on here, if you total up the taxes, comes out to 26%, including micro business. And in addition to that, from what I understand, retail, manufacturing, cultivation, etc., each of those individually would pay also a 15% excise tax in addition to this amount, right?
Correct.
Is that correct? So like for retail, if it's 5% of gross receipts plus 15% excise tax, that's a 20% tax. And I'm wondering if until these businesses get started, that even these rates might be a little bit high, especially since other cities are now lowering their tax rates because they're finding they're not able to make it. So I don't know, I wasn't here when this amount was arrived at, so I don't know what everyone's thoughts on that are.
And it's a great point, and one that's the reason why the council can adjust up or down by a resolution that takes effect immediately. So if, as a council, you come to the conclusion that the taxes are too high, you can reduce them down to 0%. There is no lower limit on it.
Okay.
I thought you said that they couldn't be raised, though. They can be lowered, but they can't be raised?
They can be raised, but they cannot exceed that maximum of 10% unless you decide on a different amount. And again, that's the council's prerogative.
Okay, thank you.
I thought the purpose of this even being on the agenda was to look at all avenues to increase the funds for the city of Oroville. So now we're talking about reducing the taxes to even 0%. I'm not real clear on this. So
This would just put it on the ballot with the maximum rate of 10%. Council gets the pleasure of talking about actual rates later.
Okay.
So, right, but even having the what's the point if we're not gonna be bringing any money into the city? Because the excise tax is for the state.
Right.
The money, the tax rates here would be city tax rates, so they would come into the city. And as was indicated in Shasta Lake, it's somewhere around $550,000 a year, using, I believe they have a 6% retail.
Correct.
But Councilmember Draper is correct, that basically the taxing of cannabis at this point is really creating a bigger black market.
Oh, I didn't say that though.
But the taxes are so high that that's what's happening. And so now even the conversation about reducing the taxes even down to 0 so they can open in our community, what are we gonna get?
No one up here mentioned 0. He was saying it as a hypothetical. Of course, we're not gonna do this with 0% coming in.
But even doing it anything less than what you have put in here, you know, $300,000 to $500,000 for the price of all of this, and that's what we're gonna get. But even Jessica McKenzie stated that if we're doing it for the money, it's the wrong reasons. So.
No, but it is also a consideration. We have to consider what we're gonna try to get. But at the same time, the goal is to enable these small business people, many of them, to be able to function and to do this. So I'm not saying it should be really low. I'm just saying in addition to the other taxes they pay, we might want to kind of weigh a lot of variables to make sure that they can still do it. Because a lot of them are small businesses. Okay.
So this, I think really it's a council policy decision. It's just really a question of whether you want to put this on the ballot.
Okay.
So there are quite a few speakers. Thank you. Any other council members have questions at this time? Okay, I'm going to open this up for public comment. Item number 7.1, the cannabis business tax, is open for public comment, and we do have several speakers. So if you wouldn't mind lining up, I call a couple of names and stand and be prepared so we can get this moving. So I have William Bynum and Jean Checky.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I think I was the last one to turn my card in, so I get to go first. That's probably the way to do it. I'm glad to see that you're going forward with this, and it's high time. And I'll congratulate you on what you've accomplished so far. And I think this is a good thing for our community and for the whole county. And I just want to commend you for taking these bold steps. So, thank you. Thank you.
You don't live in the city.
Jean Checky and then Celia Hirschman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Jean, could you speak into the microphone?
Thank you for the
And you can move that
opportunity.
microphone anywhere you want it.
Okay, got it. I am against dispensaries in Oroville, and I think it'll be a big mistake for this community. And I know most of you guys on the council here are for the dispensaries. My reasons include physical health impacts, butane hash oil causing explosion and fires, crime increase, edibles and vaping. The THC liquid concentrate creates a cancer-causing aerosol. Candy and food products with THC can be very potent. Environmental problems, gateway to other drugs, causes and exacerbates addiction, depression, and psychosis. Drug driving, teen use, and fetal risk. I have sources for all of that information in handouts that I gave you. My point is, having dispensaries normalizes the drug, making children susceptible. There's also a 4-year study of Washington and Colorado that also lists the problems that they encountered. And I hope someone here speaks to that. I didn't get to read the whole review. Also, it does say in that review, I do remember reading that there are some cities that get absolutely zero tax after enforcement costs, and the excess money ends up going into a general fund. Your reason, from what I've heard in prior meetings, is money. At what cost? You could find other ways, but you've stopped looking. Studies show that the money does not materialize. There was just a bill in Sacramento calling for lowering the tax on pot sales. And a while ago I was at one of these meetings, and every one of you was concerned with a businessman cleaning up a toxic old gas station site at his own expense and building a fast food restaurant. Your biggest concern was for children in a school nearby with increased traffic. It was quite obvious. And yet, you jump at the idea of normalizing pot sales in front of children who will now think it's okay. My last point is the annual National Night Out is coming up in August. The purpose of it is to heighten crime and drug prevention awareness. It is an evening of fun games and socializing in a drug, tobacco, and alcohol-free environment. It's a great idea and I heartily support it. But the invitation that I saw says, come and meet and greet city council members. It does not look like you are supporting the essence of this event. What will you tell parents that come up to meet and greet you? That you are adding more drugs to the community? That you want to normalize pot while parents, pastors, and teachers desperately counsel against it? Were you honest when people voted for you in the first place? And the $40,000 consultant you hired advised concerned citizens at the recent informational meeting that our only solution was to vote you out. Oroville deserves better. Thank you.
I'll manage the time from here. Thank you.
I'm Celia Hirschman. I'm a resident here. I also served on the recent community action or community feedback for this issue. I'm also a certified health coach. And the reason I'm a certified health coach and I went to school for this is because I was finally diagnosed with several autoimmune diseases that absolutely affect my particular lifestyle. I don't use marijuana for my problem, but I have a lot of clients who do. And they suffer from MS, Alzheimer's, ALS, epilepsy. The list is huge. Medical marijuana is something that in 2018 we shouldn't be arguing about anymore. What we want are realistic drugs that are easily screened, that identify precisely what's in them so that patients can take them. It's not more difficult than that. In terms of crime, to speaking to the last speaker and to what I learned, the woman who ran the dispensary, one of 3 dispensaries in Shasta, in 9 years, they've been doing it for 9 years, they're 3 blocks from the police station, they have not had one public service complaint, not one. And they didn't even have a security officer until the state mandated it just recently. A lot of the information that's been bandied about on the marijuana discussion is frankly archaic and not accurate. And I would hope, I'm very grateful that you have at least an open city council that's willing to learn and discuss this, and to leave it also for the community to discuss it.
No.
But I hope you won't be swayed by a lot of rhetoric that has been disproven and is not helpful to the community. I support this motion. I think it's time, and I'm grateful for you allowing people to speak on it.
Thank you. John Mitchell and Luke Wilson. Then Sherry Bunker.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I had the privilege as well as sitting through the stakeholders meeting the other day and being a part of this process. And one of the things that I found really interesting about this whole process is the amount of regulations the state of California has put in place when it comes to marijuana, which I find rather shocking, because we have many other businesses around here that deal in high value goods that don't have the same regulations on them. You can transport diamonds through the community easier than you can transport marijuana. And I say that in saying that even in this, Chief LeGrone mentioned that he would like to have the dispensaries right next door to the police station. To me, this is all indications of the amount of problems that bringing marijuana to our city is going to bring with it. Otherwise, these regulations would not be in place. So I'm really concerned about these tax levels, because what I haven't heard from anybody is the fiscal impact that all of this is going to have on our community. It seems like kind of like a crapshoot. We're throwing some numbers out there and we're hoping that it generates enough tax revenue to pay for all the problems that are going to come along with it and be associated to it. Personally, I'd like to see the taxes on this much higher than what they are. I think our community is going to pay a high enough price, and as a taxpayer who is against bringing marijuana to this community, I don't want to have to foot the bill. This is already costing our community money. There's already been $40,000 put out, and all these other things that are going to come along with it. And I think that the industry has an obligation to make sure that the city is not coming out of pocket, and the taxpayers who stand against this are not coming out of pocket to bring this to our city. I don't want to see these tax rates any lower than what they already are. And the other thing I have a problem with is, one, it seems to be about sustainable business model, not the impact it's going to have on our community. And while I agree from a business standpoint that we want our businesses to be profitable, at whose expense? At the city's expense. As broke as we are, I don't think that we can afford that. And the other issue I have with this is that the money is going into a general fund. It gets to get spent however you guys want it to be spent. I mean, why is there not some of this at least being allocated to drug awareness, prevention, stuff along those lines? Why is it all just being thrown into a general fund that you get to spend however you want to spend it? If you're going to bring this tax revenue, I'd at least like to see some of that going towards drug education and prevention. I understand that there were 8 middle schoolers busted with edibles here in school this year, not long ago, as well as a star athlete, high school athlete, that was busted with a marijuana ring running it out of her lockers. Her father was a grower, and she's selling it out of the locker, and had all her little boyfriends at the school selling it for her. There's mixed signals being sent. I really love the comments earlier. Man, if you guys are going to really be out there for that night in August, I'd really like to see you take a tougher stance. I don't see how the marijuana is considered medicine. My frankincense oil and all this other stuff that my wife sells, and none of that can be considered medicine, but somehow cannabis oil is. I think there's a process, and I think you guys are skipping it. Thanks.
Thank you. Luke Wilson and then Sherry Bunker.
How you doing? My name is Luke Wilson. I'm a farmer here in Butte County, also a large employer, and I hope to be a cannabis business owner here in Oroville.
Could you please speak in the mic?
And I hope to be a cannabis business owner here in the city of Oroville. I'd strongly advise against setting the tax rates too high. Oroville's got the opportunity right now to attract new business to Oroville. Not only cannabis businesses, ancillary businesses that support those businesses. That's jobs, that's, more money being spent in Oroville. If you start the tax rates too high, all Chico's got to do is open up with lower tax rates, and that's where everybody goes. So just think about it, and I would suggest starting at 1%, upping it 1% each year. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Bunker, and then Alex Geller.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor. Thank you for this opportunity. My concern is that due diligence has not been completed. There's no planning for law enforcement, no planning for code enforcement, no planning for the financial issues, no planning for infrastructure, no planning for the water usage, no planning for wastewater usage, no planning for the other utilities. Please don't put the cart before the horse and pass this now. We need to do a lot more research on what you're trying to put in place here. We need to make sure that we don't rush into these things thinking that this is going to be the saving grace of this town, because it won't. Already, we haven't even passed a tax measure, they want to lower it. We're not going to get anything out of this. There's not going to be the money there. Well, I never ever thought I would agree with Mr. Miller George. I do. I do think we need a brainstorming opportunity with all of us to find other federally legal ways to bring in revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Alex, and then August Lincoln, and then John Miller George.
Good evening. My name is Alex. I've been living in Oroville since 2011. I work in real estate. For the last year, I've been working as a consultant on a large-scale commercial cannabis operation in Rio Vista. I wanted to touch on a few things I heard tonight. For the tax rate, I think 5% is pretty reasonable, but for Rio, you have to realize these businesses do take about a year to get up and running through conditional use permit to building permit stage to actually building out. It can take about a year. So Rio Vista, for example, we did a 1% start at a $1 square foot, and then we raised it 1% every year with the cap at 5. I know that Oroville is in a unique situation. You guys do need revenue. As a potential business owner, I'd agree to somewhere between 3 to 5%. 5% is about state average, I'd say. You don't want to push that 10 too hard because those cities have had to maybe lower to be more competitive. Also, the state was the one that was also going to lower the excise a little bit, so that won't affect the city's revenue. A couple other numbers, because I know you guys like numbers, and like I said, I've been down there for about a year now watching this go down. Rio Vista is licensing about 30 cannabis businesses, from cultivation, nurseries. A lot of manufacturing is actually a big thing now. Type 6 and Type 7 are like the holy grail of permits. If you guys allow Type 7s, you guys would probably charge more than 5% on that. They might not want to hear that, but and then the other thing is they're developing about 80 acres, and this is a city that's a lot smaller than Oroville too. So, but at 80 acres, the development costs are about $1 million an acre, and that goes to electricians, that goes to permits, taxes, HVAC, concrete, metal buildings. I'm talking a dozen ancillary businesses per acre of development here. Like, this goes beyond just your gross receipts tax. You're going to see money coming in from everywhere else. And Rio Vista has gotten a pretty nice cushion now off those development fees, and they're already they want to codify that to go back to public safety as well. So I agreed with the opposition that stated if we're going to have a tax revenue, we should codify a small percent to the police directly. Another thing we're doing in Rio is all the cannabis owners, we're pitching in together HOA style for a 24/7 off-duty sheriff or cop who could double as an extra police officer in case of emergencies. So that's one thing we've done down there. On top of our own on-site security that we have to hire, there's going to be a roving patrol, and we're hoping to hire off-duty sheriff, something like that. I think it's a good opportunity. I'd urge you guys to pass the tax and the ordinance and be open. We can't have any divisiveness because that's going to delay things. As it costs business owners money, they're not going to want to open up here because, like I said, it's not cheap to start a cannabis business. It's not easy. It runs about $1 million an acre to build from scratch. So I hope you guys keep that in mind. Thanks for your time.
Alex, what is your last name, please?
Geiler, G-I-L-E-R.
Thank you.
August Lincoln, and then John Miller George, and Stephen Terry.
Mayor, council, I wish you would pass the ordinance. I'm in favor of it. I don't smoke marijuana, but I would rather somebody else pay the taxes than I. It's that simple. if you look at the latest grand jury report, it shows that you guys are in the twilight zone in the financial market. So this is one of the options to have somebody else pay the taxes instead of the citizens of Oroville. If you look at the marijuana tax data from the state of Colorado, in 2014, the total revenue was $67 million. The end of the end of 2017 was $247 million. That's the state. We're not even talking about the cities of Denver or Boulder, Colorado. They had their own sales tax to it. So if you do a little research and look at Colorado and the cities of Boulder and Denver, you can have an idea what it is. But if you look at also at Oregon recently, they had an overabundance of marijuana. They got greedy up there. That's why there's more on the market than there's demand. So they got greedy and they went backwards up in Oregon. But as I say, I would prefer somebody else to pay the tax. Thank you.
Thank you, August. John or George?
Gee, people want to come and pay taxes. My God, what a horrible thing to happen. Just imagine that. People wanting to come to Oroville and pay taxes. My goodness. I think that's called expanding the tax base, which is good. Raising taxes on the existing tax base, bad. So, I have to think you all are, at least the people that are considering this, are ahead of their time. 10 years from now, no one will be excited about whether or not cannabis is going to be in their town. I mean, let's face it. I was here in 1972 and bought my first joint. Okay, cannabis was here, is here, it'll be here, whether you guys legalize it or not. You know what the big difference is? You won't have to spend money suppressing people who want to have it. See? This here is my cancer-causing vape device. THC does not cause cancer. As a matter of fact, there's been studies that show that it cures it. And lately, in the last 2 weeks, there was a study that said that it breaks up the plaques that gives old people Alzheimer's, which means people my age should all be smoking it. Not only that, but I have a bum knee, my right one, and I have a bad ankle, my left one. So it hurts to walk unless I imbibe my cancer-causing vape. What's interesting to me is, okay, the businesses that need the most help, number 7, the micro businesses, are your family farmers, your small business operators. They've got a tax of 7%, whereas testing people have a tax of 0%. I would like to see you act like real farmers and let everybody plant their seeds and watch them grow and then start harvesting the money. Okay, there are grants available from the state if you guys pass an ordinance that meets those criteria. And not only that, but has anybody bothered reading all the regulations that the state alone has? Okay, this is just ridiculous. Count down to goodness. Okay, I still have 12 seconds left. Let's relax a little bit. You're all neighbors. Cannabis has always been here. It always will be. People will always drink. They'll always smoke. Okay, it's time to lighten up on the people like me who want the liberty to buy my medicine in the place I bought my medicine the very first time in 1972.
Thank you. Steve Terry, and then Dave Pittman, and then Chuck Reynolds.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I bet it's no surprise to any of you that I come to oppose and stand in opposition of this. Recently, as in Sunday, I got back from a conference, and we have found that it was with the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions, and guess what? One of the topics was cannabis in the workplace. And the number one thing that we have to be concerned now is the biggest edible, the fastest growing edible, is a breath mint. It's more concentrated, it's faster, and it's appealing to everybody because it's a breath mint. Think about that a second. We think the kids are going to stay away from this just because we say it's against the law? We don't have any problem with that right now at all, do we? I want to point out some other things. If we think this has no effect, I would invite the tour to come join me at the Oroville Rescue Mission, or invite the council to come join me, and I'll introduce you to a bunch of people that cannabis has absolutely destroyed their lives. It started there, it's gotten worse. I've been doing this, I'll celebrate my 20th year. This is not something new to me, and yet we're going to turn our eye to it. I came tonight thinking, gosh, we'll just vote down this tax thing and it'll go away because we're not going to get any money for it. Hey, but now I hear we can make plans, let's reduce it. We can go, I want to make sure I get the correct language here, we can go as low as 0% if we want to. Well, folks, as a person who's been in business, I never got a tax break to start a business. But yet we're going to offer it to cannabis? What about our other farmers? We don't give them tax breaks. And I want to point finally to the last thing. Shasta County, the grand jury report. In August of 2017, the city of Shasta Lake became the first city in Shasta County to sanction the legal recreational cannabis industry to operate within the city limits. Measure A was put to a vote to allow the cannabis-related industry to start effective January 1st. I want to skip down to the next paragraph. It says, in its rush to become the first Shasta County city to permit recreational cannabis, the city of Shasta Lake ineffectively planned for the increases of cannabis businesses in their city. This resulted in multiple unexpected changes in planning and permitting procedures based upon infrastructure demands, which was exacerbated when the city chose to zone the Shasta Gateway Industrial Park for cannabis-related businesses. Last meeting, we had a businessman in our district, in our business district, suddenly want to get annexed after years of not wanting to be, just so he can be in this. We're rushing headlong into the same problem. We need to stop it now.
Thank you. David Pittman and then Chuck Reynolds.
Good evening, council, mayor, and council members. As we move forward with this idea, I can't find a good reason to do this. This is such a bad idea. Mrs. Checky in the back there, I don't want to steal her thunder, but she had an excellent, eloquent description of why in the world you don't want to do this. And I compliment her for her words. My words are going to be simple tonight. Studying Shasta City's issue, the grand jury did a wonderful report. They dug into everything up there. How many of you have gone to the sewer plant to ask about our sewer effluent that's going to come from the growers? Or even found out that our sewer plant is only for residential use. So how are growers going to take care of their discharge? And also, in the Measure A, as Steve mentioned, there was a promise to provide money for law enforcement. Shasta City has given no money to law enforcement at all. And how long have they been around with this? So the voters were lied to. The issues of infrastructure are well listed in this grand jury report. And I think that, as Ms. Bunker's comments, this is immature to do. The due diligence here should go on. I asked for how many cities have reversed this. I haven't heard an answer to that. There's quite a few. I can't tell you the business community is just slowly up in arms. We're not going to deal with it. They'll go somewhere else. Don't have to be here. So for my comments, and I'll just use the balance of my time, I'd like to enter this grand jury report from the city of Shasta Lake as my comments.
so that it is in the record, and you can look at the details. I simply say the city of Shasta Lake in this issue is a disaster. And that's very clearly outlined here with all kinds of references from that grand jury report. Thank you.
Thank you. David? Chuck Reynolds and Bill Spear?
Madam Mayor, City Council members, I have a booklet here, a study from Johns Hopkins University, Lessons Learned After 4 Years of Marijuana Legalization in Washington and Colorado.
Mr. Reynolds, can you speak into the microphone?
May I pass out a copy of this to the council?
Yes.
Thank you. Sure, I'm over there. Okay, this study is from Johns Hopkins University. I don't think anyone could dispute their knowledge, understanding, and their compassion, dedication to the youth. All of you have been involved or are involved in some sort of youth group or activity, even law enforcement positions, teacher positions. All of these things make you champions for youth. I'm really surprised that we're here at this point. But the handout that I've given you, these are some highlights for you. What Colorado and Washington has shown us, using marijuana in public increases, illegal or not. Colorado leads the country in past month marijuana use by youth, and Washington is close behind. Many negative impacts on public health and safety. Rising rates of pot use by minors, higher rates of traffic deaths by driving while high, more marijuana-related poisonings and hospitalizations. After the cost of increased police enforcement are subtracted from the revenue, pot tax is limited. Since legalization in Washington and Colorado, regular use of pot by 12 to 17-year-olds has been above the national average and is rising faster than the national average. Regular pot use by 18 to 24-year-olds in Washington has gone up since legalization. Washington has more marijuana businesses than Starbucks or McDonald's. Colorado has more marijuana businesses than McDonald's and Starbucks combined. In Colorado, black market activity has gone up as cartels move in to produce marijuana alongside legal growers and move into places where it's legal. And just on a personal note, if you think that you're going to run the black market out with this, they're laughing at you, really. They grow it here and they sell it out of state. They don't care if anybody here buys it. They get $4,000 a pound in New York and $400 a pound here. So, and, yeah. So homelessness in Colorado has gone up post-legalization. 1 in 3 shelter residents in Denver said they were in Denver because of legal pot. Large businesses in Colorado are looking to hire from out of state to find employees that can pass drug tests. Accidents, injuries, and absenteeism are driving employment costs up. The percentage of traffic deaths related to marijuana doubled in Washington the year retail sales were allowed. Half of the Colorado market is made up of edibles. Through 2015, 3 accidental deaths had been reported. So the idea that marijuana doesn't kill people is complete BS. We need more data. I'm not ready to send Oroville into a death spiral Washington and Colorado have embarked on. The downsides completely outweigh the upsides. It's not even close.
Okay.
Ask any police chief.
You need to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bill Spear, and then Jessica McKenzie, and then Eric Smith.
City Council, Madam Mayor,
Speak into the microphone, please.
just say no. You probably heard that back in the 80s or 90s. It was a gimmick to try to get kids to not do drugs. Just say no. We're not talking about medical, and there are medical uses. We're talking about recreational. We're talking about fundamentally changing our city. And I would say just say no. Why not start selling methamphetamine? We have lots of experts here in Oroville. We would thin out our jails, and we'd be top in the industry. It's not your job to decide what federal laws that you want to obey or which ones you don't want to obey. Wait for Washington. We live in a republic. It's not a mob rule. It's not whoever can get the most votes to get the majority rules. It's a republic, and we have a rule of law in this country that we teach our kids about civics. If you want to be in government, this is how you do things. You send your representatives to Washington and you get the law changed. They're talking about it right now. So why would we go and jump the gun and break federal law, say that it's okay because we're the city council and we don't agree with that federal law? It's not okay. And the money you're putting out to do it, to be drug dealers, I say just say no. Let the pot people pay for the $40,000 to do the review, or the $10,000 here, or the money to get it on the ballot. Sure, we can vote it down when we get it to the ballot, but it shouldn't have to be we vote it down. You guys should just say no. You should say no. It is not federally legal. Wait for Washington to make it federally legal. They're working on the medical part of it. It is not a good example for our kids. It is not a good testimony for our city. It is not a good testimony for our community. Let's say 50-50. You guys are dividing our city. There's half this way and half that way. You should err. If it's about half and half, you should go with the rule of law. You should go with what's right and real and true. And this isn't right and real and true. It is gonna what's it gonna cost? What's it already cost? The cost to families, the cost to productivity, the cost to businesses, the cost to the children, the cost to the schools, to the increase. It is not going to be good for us. We are not going to profit, and it's going to be ill-got money. We're wasting time. The most valuable thing we have is time. I'm almost out of time, but if you keep spending your time chasing these things that are illegal and immoral, we're not going to ever come out of the hole. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica McKenzie, Eric Smith, and then Annie Terry. And then Laura Page.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm torn what to talk about here because—
Can you state your name for the record? Sorry.
Jessica McKenzie. I'm torn because my understanding was that we were to stay on topic. We were to talk about whether or not to put this measure on the ballot, not whether or not we should be engaging in cannabis businesses. So I'm going to take a little bit of a side since we've gone that direction and say to the mayor, the quote from me is not, if you're in this for the money, that's the wrong thing. The quote is, that should not be the only reason that drives us. We should also be driven by safe patient access and what's best for the community. And obviously, I disagree with many people on what that is, but that's the full quote from me. Second thing, the taxes are not the only source of money to cover the cost of implementing this. I've heard that come around a couple of times. The taxes exist, and then there are development agreements, development costs, licensing fees, costs that the city pulls in per business in order to add to a fund that oversees the regulatory process. So let's not confuse that the tax amount is the only thing that does that. When I thought I was going to come up here and talk about the tax measure, I was going to say I'd like to see you start a little lower. Not because I think there's anything wrong with those numbers, but because you can, at a moment's notice, raise them. Why not start a little lower? Because here's the thing about cannabis businesses that people don't understand. All startups are difficult. All farming is difficult. If you, however, are in the cannabis industry, you cannot borrow money through traditional sources. The fees at the state level are astronomical, and the cost of compliance just to open your doors is huge. So that first year for a cannabis business is incredibly expensive. So when I was going to talk about the tax initiative, I was simply going to say, why don't we try 1 and 3 for the 3 and 5? Let's just take a look at it because you can change it any time you want. In terms of what is on the agenda tonight, yes, I think you should put it on there in the eventuality that perhaps we will come forward with ordinances in the near future, because if you do not vote for it to be on the November ballot, and then 2 or 3 months from now, we vote an ordinance into play, you have no revenue coming from that. So act as though you might cover the revenue, and then we'll deal with all these other conversations that everybody wants to bring to the table when we get to, do we have an ordinance and what's in it? Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Smith, Annie Terry, and Laura Page.
Madam Mayor, Council, Eric Smith, thank you for this opportunity. I think just to defend the mayor, if I might, for a moment, I think the thrust of her comment really has to do with the idea that it's now been well clarified by your consultant, SCI, but really this is not going to be a big revenue generator. And I really, and again, going back to Ms. McKenzie's comments as well, that there is more at stake here, and being a part of the stakeholders meeting, than just the revenue piece. So I think that's important to just bear that in mind. If the city thinks that this is going to fix the fiscal woes, you're sorely mistaken, and I think that's been well bore out. On the 50+1, the general tax piece, just I think in the terms of a culture of distrust that's been, for whatever reason, cultivated between the city and the constituents, given the 2016 failed sales tax increase. And some folks have attributed that, connected the fact that there was not a specific goal for those tax revenues, i.e. police, law enforcement, fire, that type of thing. So that being borne in mind as it applies to this particular issue, the 50+1, I think that you need to seriously consider just how the folks perceive this, because again, it almost looks like a ramrod kind of scenario, and I don't think you really want that as a council, again, to come across that we're discounting the concerns of the folks. We're going to get a 50+1. You look at the stats, you know that it looks pretty good, but I think that again, you need to attach some of these revenues to law enforcement, to collaboration with Butte County. I think there has to be some, in good faith, just putting forth good faith. I think that you're saying that it's not going to be just a 50+1 general tax, but that we're going to, because there are going to be costs directly tied to law enforcement when you look all things considered. I know that people make the comment about Shasta Lake and the 9 years, but and typically when it comes to medicinal marijuana, that's true when you're concerned with the retail piece. But again, if you look at other situations, other cities, that's not so much. That argument begins to fall apart. So you will have costs directly tied to law enforcement. So I think that in good faith, as a city council, the 50+1, I don't think just measures up to the concerns of the folks. You're not taking into consideration the people. And so I would strongly recommend that you add some language. I know it's going to be a little bit more laborious. I know it's going to take some extra time, but I think you owe it to the folks, given what happened to the last tax push, sales tax, and it failed. And maybe this one, you can get by, but you're not taking into consideration the folks, okay, and their feelings. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Annie Terry, then Laura Page. And if there's anybody else that wishes to speak on the public comment before I close it, now's the time to fill out your card. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annie Terry, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. Many people have come before me and spoken more eloquently than I'm going to, but I want to bring up a couple of things. I was looking on my phone a while ago, and I came across a definition of a proverb that we've all heard before: fools rush in where angels fear to tread. People without good sense or judgment will have no hesitation in tackling a situation that even the wisest would avoid. If what you're doing is trying to raise revenue, and if this revenue is going to be the savior of the city of Oroville, then make that tax as high as you can. If you're not trying to do that, then you have to ask yourself, why are we doing this? I'm actually opposed to the tax, but I'm opposed to the tax for probably a backdoor reason. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. If you are getting revenue from these growers for the purpose of digging the city of Oroville up out of this pit that somehow the city of Oroville has gone into, then there needs to be fiscal responsibility about where that money is going to. And I will tell you, for one thing for sure, me and a lot of other people in this city are going to make good and sure that the money is going to a good cause, because if it's not going to a good cause, you guys are going to hear about it at every city council meeting. Because if this money is wasted, that you're all thinking, you're not all thinking, but that a portion of this city council is thinking it's going to be the savior of Oroville, you know what? I would not serve a savior that cannot save me. And if it's not going to save the city of Oroville, then you have to ask yourself, why are we doing it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Laura Page.
Somebody left their phone up here. Is this your parent? Yeah, I'm going to need that later.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Laura Page, Congressman Doug LaMalfa's office. I just want to start out with a couple things that have gotten really confused tonight. I was at prior council meetings, especially the meeting where the council approved to move forward with directing staff to hire the consultant and to look into developing an ordinance. At that meeting, it was the growers that, or the businesses that want to come here and do this legally, we're talking about double-digit taxing, like, hey, get 20%, that's going to be fine. They were tossing out these really, really big numbers. Also, the city of Shasta Lake was held out like the poster child of the perfect city doing this, and Mr. Pittman already did it and entered it into the record, but I also wanted to point out the Shasta County grand jury report, which is 19 pages, that says that's just not true. Also, I attended the Butte County Behavioral Health Marijuana Summit at Chico State, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't see anybody from the city council or the city administration, where there was a lot of really good information from our medical and social providers. They don't come to these meetings. The people who work for Butte County Behavioral Health, which I listened to for 8 hours, that are very, very concerned about this coming to our community, they don't come to these meetings because their jobs don't allow them to speak out in this forum. But if you had been at that Butte County Behavioral Health Summit, you would have learned a lot. So I'm going to put into the record one of the guest speakers' PowerPoint presentations. And one thing I'd like to highlight on pages 95 and 96 are all of the references. And these are references to medical studies, psychological studies, biological opinions. These are not op-eds. These are scientific studies. Let me just read you a few, if my time limited, of these studies. Prevalence of marijuana use disorders in the United States. Investigating the relationship between state legalization of medical marijuana and marijuana use, abuse, and dependence. Vulnerability to cannabis-related psychosis, association with frequency and potency of cannabis use, and interaction with genes regulating dopamine signaling. Do you think this has anything to do with our homeless problem? That's what our behavioral health professionals are telling us. Our homeless problem is being exacerbated by marijuana use. It is illegal. It is federally illegal. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had one additional person turn in a card. If there's anybody else, I'm going to close public hearing after this speaker. If not, Fred Spengler. Spinger, thank you.
Hi, this is my first time at the city council, and I wasn't going to speak, but I just
You have to put the microphone. Fred, you need to speak into the microphone.
I felt like I had to say something. The coal industry is going to go away. No matter what our president does to it or about it, he's not going to be able to save it. It's going to go, and I think Oroville is such a beautiful place and has so many resources that I think we could become the jewel of the county. Not
and past Chico. And the main thing I wanted to say is I understand the opponents to this tax. I understand their fear. But what really surprises me is how adamant and how know-it-all, for want of a better phrase, that they are. They think they know everything. And I think that if Oroville could shake off its fear and start, I think we should call Elon Musk and ask him to come here and set up something too. This is just one little step. And also this is just a tax. And like that one other person said, we have to pass it now, otherwise it's not going to do us any good at all. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody? Okay, closing public hearing on item 7.1. Is there any additional discussion from the council members? I have some comments, but go ahead. I can't see anybody's name in there, so.
I just wanted to reiterate the purpose of this being on the agenda is specifically for the implementation of a cannabis business tax in the city of Oroville. Nothing else.
That's true. But we had many public speakers that came here to speak their mind, and one of the things that were brought up this evening that has been discussed was whether or not it should be a general tax or a special tax. We had a general tax that didn't pass, and there is no allocation towards any safety on this. So my question would be is why is that not brought up in the consulting? And I think those were really good points brought up. And it is going to be a hardship on the safety in our community, and we couldn't pass a general tax last time because we wanted one to improve our situation. So if we're going to put a tax on, why wouldn't we allocate it to public safety? Because it requires a 2/3 vote. Are we afraid it's not going to pass? That was our fear on the general tax. So I would like the consultant to come up and address that. Why wouldn't you allocate some of this towards public safety?
Well, it doesn't prevent the council from putting some of the money towards public safety. That's your decision how you use your general fund money. But from what we have been seeing in general for cannabis taxes, they have been passing it well over 2/3. And it is likely that we're going to see the voters approve a 2/3 majority for any tax in the future anyway. But it does not prevent you as a council from allocating any part or parcel of those funds to either education, to law enforcement, whatever you decide to use it for. That's really the city's decision and you as the council.
So why wouldn't we allocate it towards drug awareness and public safety?
Yeah, I would say that if I lived in Oroville, which I don't, I would say let's use some of the money for education and communicating what we're doing and public safety. I also want to reiterate what was said by somebody else up here.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Del Rosario had a comment she wanted to make.
What? I wasn't speaking.
You were talking.
No, someone leaned over and spoke to me. I didn't say a word.
Okay.
I just want to finish by saying that there will be typically regulatory fees that go into place that are paid by the cannabis businesses that have to be Proposition 26 compliant. In other words, they have to offset the actual cost of conducting monitoring and compliance of those activities by the police force or anybody else, so that it does preserve that tax revenue for the general benefit of the community. Now, that does not go towards those current illegal activities that law enforcement is already dealing with. They will need to continue dealing with those illegal activities. But the businesses that do pay those regulatory fees, those fees offset the cost of monitoring compliance so that the tax dollars don't have to be used for that. That answer your question?
I think it got a little more convoluted than I expected.
Sorry.
That's okay. So when you mentioned that the fees that we collected, explain that. So if it were 2/3 vote going to public safety and drug awareness programs for youth in the schools, were you saying that those taxes couldn't be used for police officers doing their jobs in the normal day-to-day work?
What I was saying is that the taxes can be used however the council wants to use the taxes. There is a separate, typically a regulatory fee study that's done to look at what the costs of monitoring and compliance of those businesses will be. And those businesses then are charged, and currently charged by the state,
Right.
a fee, and you would do that locally as well. So you would look at the costs of monitoring. We conduct monitoring compliance quarterly in some cities, monthly in some cities, annually in some cities. Some cities do it biannually, twice a year.
So you do it, you charge for that? You said we do it.
If we do it. Some cities do it themselves, some cities have us do it. It doesn't matter to us really how you decide to do it as a
So is
city.
that a separate tax on top of the tax that's on the
It
ballot?
is not a tax, it's a regulatory fee, and it has to be compliant with Proposition 26, which says that any activity that the city undertakes on behalf of a business, the city is entitled to regain from that business. And it's no different for cannabis than any other business.
So it's a cost recovery system
Correct.
in the city.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments?
Comment. To put it simply, our budget is roughly 77% of public safety money goes toward a budget, roughly. So if we increase it by 300,000 to 600,000, whatever, wouldn't 77% go to public safety? I would think that would be how we would allocate it.
That obviously is the city council's direction. You could allocate it all to that. It's, at this point, if in fact, and that's already been stated, that if it's a general tax, you can spend it as you can spend any city revenue. That's how the council.
So if we wanted to hire 20 more police officers, we could do that.
On 300,000?
You could use the money to hire officers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, exactly.
Right. It would be 20. I agree with the mayor.
Yeah. But anyway, I read the grand jury report from Butte County. I spoke with the grand jury myself. They recommended that. So all we're doing is trying to follow in their recommendations. Thank you.
They recommended that we look at all alternative income streams, including the ones that Sherry Bucker brought up.
That's 20 years.
I'm sorry, Linda?
Well, I was just noting that this council, I assume, with you as mayor, for years, decades, you guys have been looking for alternative methods.
And
of revenue.
and slowly but surely, we're coming up with a lot of alternatives.
Not in time to keep us from bankruptcy.
And we have no control over the state taking away RDA
That's true.
and CalPERS.
Yeah.
And we're still being successful with the commercial development that we're doing here. Far
It's
better
not
than a
enough.
lot of other communities.
I call for the vote.
Well, doing
I-
things
I-
federally illegal is the issue.
I call for the vote.
There's no motion.
I call for the motion.
Make a motion.
I move that we pass this piece of business
At 51% or a special tax?
at 51%.
I'll second that.
Who's drafting the ordinance? Who's drafting the ordinance?
The ordinance is, we have drafted the ordinance and it's included in your packet.
So so it was already drafted. So it's just formality, right? Did everybody know that? I just wanted to know the public already knew that. All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Voting closed. Moving on to regular business, 8.1.
Carries.
City Engineers Services. Consider approval of supplemental appropriation in the amount of $30,000 for the professional service agreement with Bennett Engineering for the city engineers. For the city engineers services. Looking for any questions or comments?
Can you wrap us down so we can hear what's being said, please?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you wrap the quiet?
Yeah, you guys that are exiting, can you please be quiet? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for item number 8.1? Looking for a motion.
Do you have a resolution number for this or ordinance?
It's simply a supplemental appropriation, so you'd move to approve a supplemental appropriation if you'd like to.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Voting's open. All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Voting closed. Moving on to items 8.2.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2, School Resource Officers Services.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
I'd
It's a
like
good contract.
respectfully pull this until the next meeting. There was a procedural error at the Oroville High School Board that
Okay.
needed to be voted.
It's pulled. Item number 8.2 is pulled. Moving on to item 8.3, League of California Cities Annual Conference.
Good evening, Madam.
Consider authorization to attendance for the League of California Cities Annual Conference. Designating voting delegates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. This item is for the annual League of Cities Conference in Long Beach. It's a training opportunity for our city council. It's also an opportunity for our city council to express their opinion and vote on the policies, procedure, and direction of the League of Cities. The League of Cities is an advocacy group that we are part of that advocates on behalf of all cities in the state of California and helps lobby the state to, quite frankly, treat the cities better. If we don't go to this, and if no one attends this, then we won't be able to vote on what those policies and those practices are of the League of Cities. So my recommendation is that if you don't go to this, don't complain about what they do, because this is your opportunity to vote. They have sent this, they've requested it. It was not something that staff brought forward or the council brought forward. It was something that the League of Cities sent to us, and they asked to send at least one voting delegate and potentially two alternates. These are good opportunities for a total of 3. We can send as few as 1, we can send as many as 3. That's the council's prerogative to do that. This is a good opportunity to network and to receive training on different aspects of city governance and management. Staff is recommending that the council provide us direction as to what you would like to do.
Well, the mayor and the vice mayor are actually the voting delegates for the League of California Cities, but what's the pleasure of the council?
Well, I think we should send at least one to at least vote.
I agree with that. I'm not interested in going myself. Someone else maybe.
We don't have to make a determination who goes at this time, do we?
We actually have to designate who our voting person will be, because once you're there, you're registered, you are seated in a different area and are designated as the voting.
I'd like to designate Vice Mayor Goodson.
I think that would be great. Yeah. Is that okay with you, Jen?
I was just looking at the dates, it's September 12th to the 14th.
Correct.
I did not bring my planner, but I think I've only made one commitment in September, and it is fluid, so I'm able to go.
Good. Do you need direction or a vote?
I actually need a vote and a resolution.
So I guess I'll ask, was that a motion motion and a second?
Yeah, I don't wanna I don't wanna motion, so
Okay.
somebody else motion.
I move that we send one delegate. It's my understanding that everyone has agreed on the vice mayor to attend this conference.
Second.
Madam Mayor, if I could just clarify, I made a mistake, we do not need a resolution on this. That was my mistake.
Okay. You okay over there, Scott?
I'm doing okay, I'm just about to spontaneously combust. For some reason, having hot flashes over.
So if that's a consensus, we're
Yeah.
good to go.
And that's on
So do you want to do a formal vote?
video now, isn't it?
Yeah, let's do a formal vote because it's spending money. All in favor? Voting is open. Del Rosario? All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Voting closed.
Okay. Motion carries and Vice Mayor Goodson has been delegated.
Moving on to council and committee reports. This is the time that the council gives reports. Anybody have a report to give? Anybody? Moving on, city.
I put request to speak on here, but it's not showing apparently.
Yeah, it's not up there.
Okay, so I'm in the queue. I have been out of the country for the last few weeks, and so for the first time in a year and a half, I missed the city council meeting. And so I watched the video this morning for an hour and a half to see what I had missed. And I think that there needs to be some clarification about some things that were said at that meeting. And there was quite the discussion about the use of the city seal by Pastor Kevin Thompson, and he put that seal on his brochures as a potential supporter. The city would have been a potential supporter. And he, of course, is a nonprofit, okay? And so we're hoping that at some point we will have some funds to help him with that. But up to now, we've only been able to do it individually. But that is a very different situation from what occurred with Councilman Thompson and his video. And I just wanted to clarify that there is a difference there because his was political in nature. And I saw the video, it was sent to me by a constituent. It was sent out to a lot of other people as well. And part of the video was filmed here at City Hall with a seal behind him. And that's actually a misdemeanor, and you can be prosecuted by the Fair Political Practices Commission for using the city seal in a political ad of any kind. So, and then secondly, there was a discussion about the Rio del Oro housing project, and it was said that the project didn't happen because of the council and staff dragging our feet. And this is not true, okay? I asked them when I went on a tour of that place, I said, have you guys gotten approval yet from the state of California for your sewer treatment plant? Oh, no, but we're working on that, and it looks good. Okay, well, it looked good, but they never got that approval from the state of California, so it couldn't go forward. And that was just one of many reasons why that project fell apart. And it's a shame, because it would have been a beautiful project, and we were all disappointed by that. And then it was compared to Steve Seidenlanz's request to have his property annexed into the city. And, you know, that's a win-win, I think, for us, regardless of what happens there, because then we would get tax money off what his leases are going for in several buildings, no matter what else happens. But just for clarification, I went on a tour of the site, and so did Marlene Del Rosario and Janet Goodson at different times. But the property has its own water supply, it's supplied from a well, and it has up to 1 million gallon storage tank on the site. It has its own power supply derived from 2 500 kilowatt generators, and the property has its own sewer treatment plant. So last meeting, nobody seemed to know that information, and I thought for the public record that it should be out there. And the property's soil has been tested and was ruled clear of contaminants. So apparently that is not an issue either. And then also at the last meeting, it was said that there were grants that we could have applied for
through the continuum of care, but did not. And I'm a member of that committee, and I'm pretty dang meticulous about what happens there. And the couple of times when I couldn't attend, I had Marlene D'Orserio attend in my stead. But I called Ed Mayer today because I thought, man, maybe I missed something, and I'm falling down on the job here, even though I'm on 7 committees, and I am busy. But Ed Mayer said there weren't any grants that the city missed out on that he was aware of. So I just wanted to clarify that for the sake of my own credibility with people, that nothing was missed out on. And in fact, over the last few months, when they did get a new director of the continuum of care, I have forwarded emails to Amy Bergstrom about grant applications and possibilities. Part of the problem here is that we don't really have any nonprofits in Oroville that can qualify for some of the grants, because the Hope Center and Rescue Mission are private faith-based organizations, and there's a problem with that. But Ed Mayer did say that the Community Action Agency might be an organization that we could check with about housing for the homeless, as in emergency shelter, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing. So there are some things out there. And I attended a meeting in July 2017 with Don Russ, Don Nevers, Janet Goodson, the mayor, and I. And we were kind of brainstorming at the beginning of the meeting, what can we do to increase revenue? And everybody says, let's increase revenue. Well, that's harder to do than just, on the surface of it. And the mayor said, we need to think outside the box. She said, what do you guys think about a cannabis tax? Okay? And we said, well, that's something to consider. And I said, but in this town, it would be political suicide. And then we, as a group, directed Don Russ to bring back information to the council on how to proceed with this and to get more information. Okay? So I think the mayor deserves some credit for initiating this process. And
You know what, Linda? I'm going to stop you right there, because that's a flat lie.
That
is a flat lie.
At that meeting. So
And the 4 witnesses? The 4 witnesses, I don't even want to be part of.
It's Don Rust, Don Nevers,
Don
Janet
Nevers was
Goodson,
not in that
and I.
room.
Yes, she was.
And you and Janet Goodson had been texting each other all day.
No,
That's
not
the
about
day.
that. She
Yep.
called me earlier today, not about this.
So-
But here's the deal, okay? We are trying to generate additional revenue, and we are trying to think outside the box. Thank you.
And you did say it was going to be political suicide. So moving on, anybody else? Director's reports.
Staff is working with a number of interested parties on various types of housing developments that are in their infancy, but they look like they're going to be big.
Chief LeBron? Sure, Ruth? You don't have anything?
Thank you, Chief.
Good work on your budget, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll report on Ruth. She just got back from Hawaii. I don't know if that's reporting or telling.
Well, after the last meeting and getting the budget done, she deserves it.
What I handed out to you is just the monthly report for May from the police and fire department, just some general statistics and activities. The council has requested that these monthly reports come, so the police and fire, public safety will be doing that every month, along with the one that came that Don generated for us at the last meeting. The other question I have for the council tonight is, in consideration of the next meeting being on July 3rd, would the council be interested in moving that meeting to July 10th? It'd be 1 week later. The reason being is that it's going to be difficult for our community to be here on the 3rd, because a lot of people travel over the 4th of July weekend. It is a holiday the very next day, so staff's going to be here. Either way, we're going to be working on the 3rd. We just wanted to know what would be the feeling of the council about moving that back 1 week. There would be a meeting on the 10th, and then there would be a meeting on the 17th of July.
Well, since a lot of people are on vacation anyway, is there any reason why we actually need to have 2 meetings back to back? We could just do 1 meeting in July.
As long as we get all of our business done on the 10th, that would have to be a decision of the council, if we wanted to do that. We do need to have the meeting on the 10th. We're required to bring the budget and adopt the budget in the first meeting in July. So it doesn't say the first Tuesday, it just says the first meeting. And then the second meeting, if we can get all of our work done, you know, like I tell my kids, if you get your work done, I really don't care what you do.
So I guess the first question is council amenable to moving the 3rd to the 10th? That's the first question.
That's fine with me.
I'm okay with that.
And I think after the 10th, you can determine whether or not you need the
Right.
17th.
We will reschedule that and notice the public then, if everyone's good with that, for the 10th. And we'll be working on adopting our budget on the 10th. Thank you, Tom.
Correspondence is attached. If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be
July 10th.
July 10th.
How is meeting? How is what is her name?
Emily?
Emily.
She's great. She decided to actually not come back to work.
Oh, she decided not to? I thought she did come back for a little bit.
Nope.
No, she decided not to come back. Oh my God.
I did not say a word. She leaned over and said something. I didn't even turn it on. Thank you.